Is it considered a weapon? Zealer, the Qian weapons expert, laughed as he studied the human's gun, saying, "Looks more like a farming tool. Basic, sluggish. Is it even capable of shooting?" A chorus of laughing broke out from the assembled alien soldiers around him. Members of the United Coalition of Species, they came from all over the galaxy, and each represented what they considered to be the highest level of military technology. Their weapons, which were powered by energy, were incredibly powerful and compact, and they had sleek armor. Humanity appeared to be in possession of an old artifact. Holding his guns securely, Private James Callahan ignored the taunts and slurs. In an unprecedented combined military drill, he was representing Earth. The Coalition had demanded that people enlist, even only as a show of goodwill. The jeers had begun quickly after that. By now, Callahan was used to it. The highly developed alien species had previously written off their technology as antiquated. "What's this thing even made of? Steel?" Zealer went on, swiping his spindly claws over the gun. "You are aware that kinetic weapons are obsolete, correct? Energy-based systems have been used by humans for millennia." Callahan only gave a shrug. He added nonchalantly, "You don't have to like it, but it gets the job done." The area was filled with the sound of hoots, whistles, and clicks as the alien soldiers burst into laughing once more. Callahan observed them with composure, his face remaining expressionless. He was aware that they were playing a game. Being the recent arrivals, humans were still viewed as primitive and less advanced. Commander Threx, a massive scaled figure that shimmered in intense armory illumination, angrily yelled, "Enough!" His voice was a razor that sliced through the cacophony. The space became quiet. "Private Callahan, would you mind detailing the features of your weapon? Sincerely, I'm intrigued." Callahan looked at his rifle, then back at the group of extraterrestrials. A tiny smile couldn't help but appear on his face. "This M4 carbine is what is. Fires NATO rounds measuring 5.56 by 45 millimeters. Dependable and lightweight. Able to fire in 3-round burst mode or semi-automatic mode. Effective range, roughly 500 meters, to be exact." Zealer gave a snort, his jaw quivering with laughter. "And how does it compare to, say, our plasma rifles?" "Well," Callahan remarked, his words deliberate, "plasma rifles are amazing. Of course, they can melt through most common armor. However, they have certain drawbacks, such as high power consumption, recoil dampeners, and overheating during extended fire." Zealer dismissively waved a claw. "I apologize. The future belongs to plasma. It is deadly energy. When you could burn someone with a flash of light, what good would it do to throw a piece of metal at them?" Callahan's voice was cool as he locked eyes with Zealer. "The point is, it works." Commander Threx interrupted before Zealer had a chance to respond. "Shall we end this discussion now? Field examination. Right now. See what the human weapon is capable of, please." Turning, he gestured toward a door leading to the gun range. "Private Callahan, you have the floor." With a playful demeanor, the extraterrestrials trailed after, with some nodding their heads and others conversing among themselves in their mother tongues. Versus. With his gun slung over his shoulder, Callahan strolled serenely behind them. He saw the looks of superiority and sadness on their faces as they entered the range. They genuinely thought they had already prevailed in this competition. The firing range was a large room full of different targets, including energy shields, holographic representations of enemy forces, and tough metal plates. It was built to withstand the might of the most potent weaponry in the Coalition. The walls were covered in deep gouges caused by particle beams, ion scorch marks, and plasma burns, all of which attested to the aliens' devastating ability. Zealer stood off to the side, his multi-lensed eyes glinting with scorn, and snarled, "All right, human, show us what that relic can do." Callahan moved to the middle of the range after giving a nod. Squeezing the trigger, he turned off the safety and pointed the sights down. The rifle fired, sending a piercing crack echoing around the room. The backlash felt like a reassuring, well-known shock against his shoulder. The bullet went downrange and hit one of the metal targets exactly in the center. The reinforcement metal was instantly and clearly punctured by a small, clean hull. The extraterrestrials blinked, spreading their different optical appendages. Zealer's arrogant look wavered. "Well," he unwillingly said, "so it can pass through metal. Extraordinary for a projectile." Threx gave a command in a neutral tone. "Try the shielded target next." He wasn't impressed, nor was he making fun of it. All he wanted to do was see. Callahan straightened his body and pointed downrange at one of the glistening energy shields. The Coalition soldiers took great pleasure in their shields, which could deflect destructive munitions and even plasma bolts. Nobody thought the human rifle would have much effect on it. He shot once more. The air cracked again. With a slight flicker, the round shot toward the shield and through it. The bullet impacted the metal target behind shield and left a deep depression a second later, with a clang. The range was thick with deep silence. Zealer hesitantly stepped closer, his mandibles twitching in surprise as Threx's eyes narrowed. How? Unlike plasma or particle beams, physical projectiles are not impacted by energy dispersion fields, Callahan stated, lowering his rifle. "The purpose of your shields is to block energy. My weapon used physics, not energy." Threx's eyes never left the target, his countenance devoid of meaning. But Zealer gave a stutter of outrage. "However, that is only brute force. That lacks sophistication." Callahan gave a shrug. "Maybe not. However, it functions. And occasionally, that's all you require." With a slow nod, Threx turned to face his warriors. "Fascinating. Really fascinating. It appears that we have been ignoring certain basics." The aliens looked at each other nervously. They hadn't anticipated the demonstration to proceed in this manner. They had come to mock humanity's purported weapon and flaunt their superior technological prowess. Rather, they were discovering the ruthless efficiency of simplicity on its own. Zealer crossed his arms in a defiant manner, refusing to concede the fight. "Okay, so shields are punched through by it. Can it, however, shoot at the same pace as our weapons?" Callahan raised his rifle again, grinning. "Want to find out?" At the side of the range, Threx gestured to the technicians. He gave the order, "Prepare the automated targets," with a hint of expectancy in his voice. Top speed, haphazard designs. The technicians tapped at their consoles and nodded. Across the range, a string of targets appeared, each with an overlay of an energy shield designed to dart in an unpredictable manner. For soldiers in the Coalition, it was a routine drill meant to gauge their accuracy and response time when using fast-moving plasma weapons. Zealer looked at Callahan while crossing his arms and clenching his jaw. "Your outdated gun isn't going to keep up. These targets can be quickly tracked and neutralized by plasma fire." Callahan acknowledged the challenge with a nod. "Let's see what happens." He examined his firearm, skillfully adjusting the sights. His breathing remained steady and his posture relaxed. It was not bluster. Experience was what it was. "On my mark," said Threx. 3, 2, 1, go. In a whirl of activity and flashing shields, the range sprang to life. Targets occasionally vanished, zipped side to side, and altered elevation. Zealer stood behind makeshift fortifications, waiting for the human to struggle. Ultimately, the precise accuracy, quick changes, and continuous tracking needed for this drill were precisely what Plasma Gun's instantaneous energy discharge was good at. But Callahan started shooting. With every shot, the rifle let off a quick series of cracks that reverberated across the range. He squeezed the trigger quickly after the other, and the sound was almost repetitive, almost mechanical. His movements were deliberate and fluid, and his eyes were tracking the targets meticulously. He fired each time a target hesitated or shifted course. Each time he discharged his weapon, a shield would vanish momentarily, and the bullet would strike its target with a metallic clang. With each hit, the alien troops' amazement grew as they looked. They observed as the targets dropped one by one, striking each one squarely. Callahan concentrated his mind and maintained a grounded stance instead than wasting time on flashy moves. The rifle kept up its steady beat, filling the room with its unrelenting pulse of sound. "Impossible," Zealer exclaimed, opening his jaws wildly. "How can you keep up with their speed?" Callahan said, "Practice." without turning around. He spoke in a tone as composed as if he were talking about the weather. We frequently practice with shifting targets. For it, a complex system is not necessary. All you need is aim and have quick reflexes. Zealer scowled, but he couldn't finish his argument. The outcomes were self-explanatory. Callahan had struck almost every target, including the ones the Coalition thought would be hardest to trace. The last target crumbled as a final shot rang out, its shield wavering as it fell to the ground. Aside from the soft hum of the automatic range turning off, the room was quiet. Threx moved forward, his face showing a mix of interest and another emotion, possibly respect. He acknowledged that your weapon performs admirably in combat conditions, but the admission felt stinging. However, fire rate isn't the only factor. Our plasma systems are far more destructive than your gun. Parts of a target can be completely destroyed by a single plasma bolt. Callahan cast a quick glance at the commander before glancing at the blazing targets strewn over the range. That's right, he admitted. Powerful is plasta. However, it has drawbacks, such as high energy consumption and cooling requirements. Furthermore, you are wasting valuable power if you miss. With sparkle in his eye, Threx said, then maybe you would be willing to test that power difference. Face something bigger than what your weapon can easily pierce with brute power. The air changed. Callahan knew what Threx was hinting at. It was no longer a question of demonstrating a point. Rather, it was a test to see if human weaponry could equal the Coalition's devastating power. Callahan gave a nod. All right, what ideas do you have? Once more, the commander signaled to the techs. Prepare the armored target. A portion of the floor opened at his command, revealing a large slab of reinforced metal. It was protected by a variety of defensive coatings that could withstand the strongest artillery used by the Coalition. The extraterrestrial warriors exchanged astute looks. This was the ultimate weapon test for the Coalition, a multi-layered, dense structure designed to withstand high-yield bombs, ion guns, and plasma fire. In contrast, Callahan's rifle appeared pathetic. It's time to see how your physics compares to this, Zealer scoffed, certain that this proof would put an end to the human farce. Callahan stepped up to the firing line and studied his target. His fingers went to his vest, and he withdrew an attachment, a small cylindrical device. He secured it in place by screwing it into his rifle's muzzle. Zealer cocked an eyebrow in confusion. What's that? Some kind of muzzle brake? Suppressor, was Callahan's simple response. And this, he continued, holding up a special magazine loaded with svelte pointed bullets, is ammunition designed to penetrate armor, intended for purposes such as these. Zealer blinked, his jaw quivering nervously. Piercing through armor? Your small bullets won't work. With a chilly, acerbic voice, Callahan cut in. You don't need to understand it. Just watch. He loaded the magazine, unsheathed the gun, and took a long shot. His entire body froze. His surroundings appeared to get smaller, and he was only able to concentrate on the objective. With every alien soldier leaning in and fixing their eyes on the sight, the chamber exuded tension. Callahan let go of the trigger. The rifle barked, this time with more aggression and depth than before. The bullet hit the armored block with a straight trajectory. Nothing seemed to have happened for a moment. There was no flare, no explosion. Subsequently, a barely perceptible fissure extended throughout the surface of the object. Zealer was about to laugh, but something stopped him from doing so. The metal developed a gash as the break became wider, and part of the outer layer came off. A murmur of disbelief filled the room. Small caliber, Callahan remarked, interrupting the startled quiet. However, if it is designed properly and moves at a sufficient speed, it can cut through almost anything. That is the capability of kinetic weapons. Threx moved in closer, scrutinizing the collision site with narrowed eyes due to intense focus. He said, more to himself than to anyone else, you engineered a projectile to bypass traditional defenses. No dispersion of energy. Focused impact. Callahan clarified, it's not about sheer power, and he tossed the used magazine aside. It's all about accuracy and flexibility. The most sophisticated protections can occasionally be defeated by the simplest approach. Zealer's confidence cracked like the armor itself as his eyes flitted between the injured target and the human. "You had this planned." Unflinching, Callahan addressed his stare. "We weren't trying to look good. Our goal was to live." The last shot's reverberation continued to reverberate across the astonished quiet that filled the room. Callahan stayed where he was, look apathetic. The aliens were looking, taking in what they had just seen, instead of laughing or scoffing. The massive armor target, which was previously thought to be unbreakable, suddenly had a gash that demonstrated the potency of an apparently simple weapon. At last, Commander Threx, who had always been the spectator, stood up. As he got closer to the goal, his gaze did not stray. Using his scaled fingertips, he traced the spot on the damaged surface where the missile had entered the metal. His voice measured, he turned slowly to face Callahan. "Outstanding. Your weapon is calculated, not just basic." Zealer shook his head in shock, still trying to process what had happened. However, how is it that a weapon so simple can accomplish this in the era of technical advancements? There was a hint of bewilderment mixed with unwilling reverence in his tone. Stepping forward, Callahan felt the weight of their scrutiny. "Your technology is amazing, without a question. Engineering marvels include ion cannons, energy shields, and plasma rifles. However, sometimes all that intricacy obscures fundamental ideas." He pointed to his firearm. "Kinetic weapons employ pure force. There is no energy signature, no overheating, just the best possible physics. We learn to make basic tools do the most damage in order to adapt to the harsh environment on our home planet." Zealer scoffed, albeit his posture now showed a marked lack of confidence. "You're implying that we've been designing our weapons excessively." "Not quite," Callahan answered. "You've been making the most of your situation. When faced with similarly sophisticated defenses and access to advanced energy supplies, plasma weapons make sense. However, we were raised in an environment where storms, predators, and other people were all around us. We discovered how to use whatever materials we had on hand to make our weapons effective." Threx gave a slow nod, his expression thoughtful. "It's not about who is better," he remarked reflectively. "It's about making the most of what you already have. Your weapon is deadly even though it is simple because it is based on fundamental truths about the physical reality." He halted and surveyed his warriors around the room. "And in our quest for the pinnacle of technology, we've forgotten that." Zealer moved, his gaze flitting between Callahan and Threx as the reality of what he had just witnessed clashed with his pride in his species' technological prowess. "You're saying that using force can still be beneficial," Callahan corrected. "Not brute force. Accuracy, ease of use, flexibility. Although incredibly advanced, your technology is specialized. Our weapons aren't very fancy, but they can be used in nearly any circumstance. Because they are adaptable, simple to maintain, and capable of surprising the adversary, the ancient methods are sometimes the most effective." Taking a calm yet firm attitude, he slung the weapon over his shoulder. "You ridiculed our antiquated weapons because they didn't conform to your notion of cutting-edge combat. However, they have survived wars, natural disasters, and the most hostile circumstances for humanity." The other troops whispered to one another while Threx held up a hand to indicate silence. With a commanding voice, he said, "Private Callahan, you've given us much to consider. Maybe we should quit putting too much stock in what we don't know." He looked at Zealer, who gave a tentative nod. The alien bugoid appeared to be